first thing I felt was the cold, and the second thing I felt was 4 pairs of eyes watching me like I was about to break. I opened my eyes and the room was pale blue, the light coming from nowhere and everywhere at once. My back was pressed against a table that felt like wet stone, though it was dry to the touch. My arms would not move past a certain point, held by something invisible, something that gave slightly when I pushed but never let go. 4 tall shapes stood around me in a half circle. They were thin, almost too thin, wrapped in robes that shimmered like oil sitting on water. Where a face should have been, there was only a ridge and 2 hollow black wells that caught the light and threw it back at me. I did not scream. I want to be honest about that, because later it became the whole point of everything that happened. I did not scream because my mind had already moved past the shock and landed on something far more urgent. I was freezing. "Why is it so cold in here?" I said, my voice cracking from the dry air. Nobody answered. The 4 shapes turned toward each other, and I understood, even then, that something about my question had broken a rule I did not know existed. My name is Daniel Cross, and 3 hours earlier I had been asleep in my apartment on the edge of a small coastal town, with the window cracked open and the sound of waves drifting in. Now I was lying on a table on a ship that did not belong to my planet, surrounded by beings who had clearly expected something very different from me. One of them stepped closer. Its head ridge caught the blue light, and I saw my own reflection in its black eyes, small and pale and blinking. It made a sound like a zipper pulled slowly through fabric, and I would later learn that sound was the closest thing it had to clearing its throat. A 5th figure entered the room, taller than the rest, its robe a darker shade, moving with the unhurried confidence of someone used to being obeyed. It looked down at me the way a teacher looks at a student who has just given the wrong answer with complete confidence. "You should be afraid," it said. The voice did not come through the air. It arrived somewhere behind my chest, a vibration more than a sound. "I am afraid," I said. "I am also cold, and right now the cold is winning." The tall one tilted its head. Behind it, one of the 4 shorter figures made the zipper sound again, longer this time, and I would learn much later that this was closer to their version of surprise. "Every subject we have retrieved has screamed upon waking," the tall one said. "Everyone, across many cycles, across many worlds. You have not screamed." "Give me a minute," I said. "I am still catching up." It did not laugh, because I do not think it had the parts to laugh, but something in its stance shifted, like it was recalculating a number it had been certain of a moment before. They adjusted the temperature. The air around me warmed, and my shoulders came down from where they had been locked near my ears. I did not know if this was kindness or curiosity, whether they wanted to see what I would do next if the one obstacle in front of me was removed. Either way, I was grateful. "Thank you," I said. The tall one did not respond right away. Instead, it turned to the 4 shorter figures, and they spoke among themselves in a language built from clicks and long pauses, nothing like the words I knew. I caught none of it, but I noticed the tall one kept glancing back at me, as if checking that I had not changed my mind and decided to panic after all. I want to explain something about myself, because it matters for what came later. I grew up on a boat with my father, who fixed engines for a living and never once raised his voice, no matter how badly a job was going. He taught me that panic never fixed anything, that the first move in any bad situation is to find the smallest problem you can solve it, and then look at the next one. Cold was a problem I could name. Everything else was still too big to hold in my hands. The restraints loosened, not fully, but enough that I could sit up. My legs swung over the edge of the table, and my bare feet touched a floor that felt warm, almost soft, nothing like the cold air above it. "What is this place?" I asked. "You may call it a vessel," the tall one said. "We have been recording your species for some time. This is the first retrieval." "Retrieval?" I repeated. "That is a polite word for kidnapping." "It is temporary," it said. "You will be returned once observation is complete." I looked around the room properly for the first time. Screens of pale light lined one wall, filled with symbols that curved and folded into each other, nothing like any alphabet I recognized. On another wall, a section of the room seemed to ripple, like a window made of water instead of glass, and beyond it I could see stars in a pattern I did not know, which meant we were no longer anywhere near home. "How many others have you taken?" I asked. The tall one paused before answering, and in that pause I understood the answer was going to matter more than the number itself. "One other," it said, "from your world. Retrieved 2 of your days ago." My chest tightened. "Who?" "A female, young. She is held in the adjoining chamber." "I want to see her," I said. "That was not part of the protocol," the tall one said. "Nothing about me has been part of your protocol so far," I said. Might as well keep going. There was another long pause, another exchange of clicks between the four shorter figures, and then the tall one stepped back and gestured toward the rippling wall. It parted like water pulled apart by an invisible hand, and beyond it was a room much like mine, another stone table, another set of restraints, and a young woman sitting up on the edge of it, hugging her knees to her chest. She looked up when the wall opened, and her eyes went wide, not with fear of me, but with the relief of seeing another human face. "You are real," she said. "Please tell me you are real." "I am real," I said. "My name is Daniel." "Claire," she said. "Claire Bennett. Please tell me you know what is happening, because nobody here will tell me anything." "I do not know much more than you do," I said. "But I know we are not alone in this, and that matters." She slid off the table and walked toward the opening between our two rooms, her steps careful, watching the tall alien the entire time like it might close the gap between us again. It did not. It stood back and watched the two of us with what I can only describe as scientific interest, the kind of look you give an experiment that has started producing results you did not expect. "They keep asking me questions," Claire said, "about fear, about what scares me. I do not understand why. I think we broke something," I said. "I think every other species they have taken has reacted a certain way, and we did not." "I screamed," Claire admitted, her voice quiet. "When I woke up here, I screamed for almost a full minute before I stopped." "That is fine," I said. "That is a normal thing to do." "But you did not scream," the tall one said, and both of us turned toward it. She screamed. "You did not. This is the detail that concerns us." "I am sure it will pass," I said. "It will not," the tall one said, "because we have now observed two members of your species under identical conditions and produced two different results. One screamed. One asked about temperature. This means your species cannot be predicted the way the others could. This is a problem for us." I looked at Claire, and she looked at me, and for a moment neither of us knew whether to be worried or relieved that we had confused them this badly. "Why does that matter so much to you?" I asked. "Why do you need us to be predictable at all?" The tall one was quiet for a long moment, long enough that I wondered if it was choosing to ignore the question entirely. Then it spoke, slower than before, as if translating each word carefully before letting it out. "We have observed many worlds," it said. "Many species, across many cycles of our own time, far longer than either of you could easily imagine. Every species we have studied follows a pattern once removed from their home and placed somewhere unfamiliar. Fear first, then anger, then either negotiation or collapse. We build our approach around this pattern. It has never failed, until now. So we are the first ones who did not follow the script," Claire said. "You are the first ones who followed two different scripts at once," the tall one said. "This has never happened in our records." I thought about what my father used to say about engines, that the ones that broke the rules of how an engine should behave were usually the ones about to teach you something new about how engines worked in the first place. I did not know if the same idea applied to entire species, but it felt close enough to be worth trying. "Maybe the pattern was never really about fear," I said. "Maybe it was about what each person decides matters most in the moment." Claire was scared, and she let herself feel it. I was cold, and I dealt with that first. Neither one of us is wrong. We are just built to solve problems in whatever order feels most urgent to us, one at a time. The tall one turned its head ridge toward the four shorter figures, and they exchanged a long series of clicks, longer than any conversation they had had before. I could not understand a word of it, but I understood the tone, the same tone I had heard in meetings between people trying to decide if a plan needed to be scrapped entirely. "We will need to observe further," the tall one finally said. "Fine," I said. "But if you are observing us, we get to ask questions too. That seems fair." "You are in no position to set terms," it said, though there was less certainty in its voice than there had been at the start. "Maybe not," I said. "But you already told me you have never seen anything like us before. That means you do not actually know what position we are in either, not yet." Claire let out a short breath that was almost a laugh, quiet and surprised, like she could not believe I had just said that out loud to something that could probably crush both of us without much effort. The tall one did not answer right away. It stepped back, its robe shifting like liquid catching light, and gestured for the four shorter figures to follow it out of the room. Before it left, it paused at the doorway and looked back at the two of us. "You will be given food," it said, "and warmth. Continue as you are." Then it was gone, and Claire and I were alone in the joined space between our two rooms, the rippling wall still open, the stars beyond the far window drifting slowly past, like they were in no hurry at all. "Do you think that went well?" Claire asked. "I think we are still here, and they are more confused than they were an hour ago," I said. I will take that as a win for now. She sat down on the edge of my table, and I sat beside her, both of us quiet for a moment, listening to the low hum of the ship around us, a sound like a giant engine, breathing slowly in and out. I keep thinking about my sister, Claire said after a while. She does not know where I am. Nobody does. We will get back, I said, and I meant it, even though I had no way of knowing if it was true. Sometimes the only thing you can offer someone is a promise built on hope instead of fact, and sometimes that is enough to get both of you through the next hour. Food arrived not long after, brought in by one of the shorter figures, a tray with small cubes of something pale and warm, tasting faintly of grain and nothing else. Neither of us complained, though Claire made a face after the first bite that told me exactly what she thought of the flavor. Over the next stretch of time, which I had no way of measuring since there was no clock and no sun, the tall one returned several times, always with questions. It asked what made me decide to focus on the cold instead of the danger. It asked Claire what the fear had felt like, whether it had a shape or a color in her mind. Questions that felt strange until I realized it was trying to build a map of something it had never needed to map before. The shape of a human mind under pressure. At one point it brought a device, small and round, resting in its long fingers, and asked if it could place it against my temple. I hesitated, thinking of every story I had ever heard about probes and experiments, but Claire nodded slightly beside me, a small signal that said we had already come this far, and I let it happen. The device was cool, barely noticeable, and after a moment it was removed. The tall one studied a screen that lit up beside it, filled with more curling symbols I could not read. Your mind organizes threat differently than we expected, it said. You separate discomfort from danger, where our other subjects combine them. This explains the temperature question. So I am not broken, I said. Just wired a little differently. Differently is not broken, it said, and something in the way it said this felt almost like an apology, though I could not be sure that was a concept it even had. Hours passed, or what felt like hours. Claire and I talked about home, about small things, the kind of things you only appreciate once they are out of reach, the smell of rain on a hot road, the sound of a kettle starting to whistle, the particular quiet of a house at night when everyone else is asleep. It helped to talk. It helped more than either of us expected. Then the tall one returned one final time, without the device, without the four shorter figures trailing behind it. It stood at the edge of the room and looked at the two of us for a long moment before speaking. A decision has been made, it said. You will both be returned to your world. Claire grabbed my hand without thinking, and I did not pull away. Why now? I asked. What changed? Our purpose was observation, the tall one said. We have observed enough to understand that your species cannot be reduced to a single pattern. This makes further study difficult under our current methods. It also makes you less useful to certain other groups who might wish to use predictability against you. Other groups? I said slowly. There are more than us in the wider dark, it said. Not all of them share our approach. Some prefer subjects that behave in ways they can control. You do not behave in ways that can be easily controlled. This may serve you well in the future. It was the closest thing to a warning I had heard since waking up on that table, and somehow it felt more unsettling than anything that had come before it. Will we remember this? Claire asked, when we go back. You will remember, the tall one said. We do not erase what we have not learned to erase. Your species may be the reason we reconsider that practice as well. The room shifted then, a low hum rising beneath the floor, and the rippling wall between our two spaces closed slowly, though this time it left a doorway open rather than a solid seal, as if some decision had been made to stop treating us as separate specimens and start treating us as two people who belong together in the same space. I do not remember the exact moment we left the ship. I remember warmth spreading through the room, then a pull, gentle rather than violent, like being lowered into water rather than thrown into it. The last thing I saw of that ship was the tall one standing at the edge of the light, watching us go, its head ridge tilted in a way that almost looked like curiosity mixed with something softer, something closer to respect. I woke up in my own bed, the window still cracked open, the sound of the waves outside exactly as I had left them. For a moment I thought the whole thing had been a dream, until my phone buzzed on the nightstand and I saw a message from a number I did not recognize. It was Claire, asking if I was really back, if any of it had truly happened. I called her within the hour, and we sat on the phone for a long time saying very little, both of us simply glad to hear a voice that understood exactly what the other had been through, without needing a single detail explained. Neither of us told anyone the full story at first. Who would believe it? A cold room, A table that felt like stone, a tall shape with hollow black eyes, watching two humans fail to behave the way it expected. It sounded like the kind of thing you would dismiss instantly if a stranger told it to you over coffee. But sometimes, late at night, I still think about that final thing the tall one said, about other groups out there in the wider dark who preferred subjects they could predict and control. I think about how close we came to being filed away as simply another version of something they already understood, and how the only reason we were not was because one of us screamed, and one of us asked about the cold, and neither answer was wrong. I think that is the whole point of what happened to Claire and me. Not that we were brave, though maybe we were. Not that we were clever, though maybe that too. It was that we were, each of us, exactly who we already were, even lying on a stone table on a ship among the stars, far from anything familiar, far from any reason to expect it would ever make sense again. Sometimes that turns out to be the only thing that matters.